Alright, so today we are going to go over comparing numbers, including decimals, figuring out which one's biggest, which one's smallest, and I just included in here, if these were times in a race, which number would be the fastest. Just because a lot of questions for some reason ask about the fastest in a race, and I just want to clarify that the fastest time in a race is always the lowest time, right? If it takes someone 10 seconds to run somewhere, and then it takes someone else 7 seconds, the person who got there in 7 seconds got there 3 seconds before the 10-second person, right? So I just want to reiterate, because sometimes when you're going quick on a test and you're thinking the fastest, you're thinking, oh, the fastest would be the biggest number, but actually it's the opposite, and it's the smallest number. So I just wanted to clarify that. So we have which number is biggest and which number is smallest. When we are comparing numbers, the best thing to do is line them up by place value. And how you do that with decimals is you actually want to line them up by the decimal. Now, in this case, we have a whole number right here, which is right here, and the decimal on any whole number comes right after the ones column. So it comes to the right of the whole number. If there is no decimal in it, it's a whole number, and the invisible decimal is right here. So the first thing I want to do is line these numbers up by the decimal. Okay. So when I say that, I just mean put the decimal in a line and then make sure that your place values are all in a row, right? You want it to be neat, because if they are not neat, you are going to start confusing what number is in what place value, okay? So, and I'm trying to do it as neat as possible, writing with the mouse. So I apologize if it is not that neat, but I think it's pretty clear what numbers are in what place value. So now, the next thing to do, here's a trick, if we're wondering about decimals, is I just want to tell you guys that I can write, after this, 7/10, right? So this is 56 and 7/10. Now, if I write a 0 here, it would become 56 and 70/100, which is actually exactly the same. And I can keep writing zeros here infinitely, and the value doesn't change. So the easiest trick to figure out what numbers are biggest is to just add zeros. This only works after the decimal. If you add zeros to whole numbers, the number completely changes, right? But after decimals, add zeros to make it so that all of these numbers have the same number of place values after the decimal. And now, all of a sudden, these numbers become a lot easier to figure out which one is biggest. Okay? So they all start, so if you're figuring out which one's biggest or which one's smallest, we're figuring out they all, you want to start in the biggest place value, which in this place is the tens, and they all have 5. Now, if one of them had 4 and the rest had 5, that would automatically be the smallest. We could cross out, we wouldn't have to figure out anything else. If one of these had 4 in the tens, we wouldn't have to look at any other numbers to figure out that that's the smallest. But anyway, they all have 5. So now we want to look at the next column, which is the ones place. Now this one has a 4, which is lower than the 6, the 5, and the 6. That means that since the 4 is the lowest in this column of ones, that means that this is the lowest. And this would actually win the race, right? Because it would be the fastest time because it's the lowest number. We know it's the lowest because it has the lowest number in the ones place value, okay? And that's, we go from the left to the right and compare numbers in each place value. Now, we know that the 55 number is the next lowest, and then these two, the 56s, we have to figure out which one's the biggest. Now we go to the next number, and we have the 7 and then the 3. Okay, so obviously this one is bigger because it has the 7, okay, in the tens column, whereas this one has the 3 in the tens column. Now I could keep going, right? If I want 56.7. Okay, so now let's say we're comparing these two numbers. These both have 7 in the tens place. These both have 0 in the hundreds place. Now in the thousands place, this one has a 3, whereas this one has a 0. So in that case, this number, this new number that I just wrote, would be the biggest in that case. Okay, so basically, line up all the decimals, put zeros to make sure you have the same amount of digits after the decimal, and then you just go from the biggest place value to the smallest, and if one of the numbers is bigger than the rest of the numbers in any of the place values starting from the biggest, that's the biggest number. So that's basically the easiest way to figure out which one's biggest and which one's smallest.